Well, good evening and welcome. We're so glad you could join us for this midweek Bible study tonight. Quite a while back, I was reading an article about life on other planets, and that's what I do. And if you're into stuff like that, weird science type of stuff, you may have heard of the Fermi Paradox. I was reading about the Fermi Paradox and how to deal with it. The Fermi Paradox states that statistically speaking, if we're looking at just the numbers, there should be lots and lots and lots of life on other planets, and yet we have no proof that there is any. After coming up with astounding calculations and the high probability of life out there in the universe, the physicist Enrico Fermi reportedly looked up to the sky and said, "Where is everybody? Where is everybody? The numbers are really high. The statistics are really high. Where is everybody?" We've been pointing our antennas and satellites and telescopes and everything out to those other planets, out into outer space, and we've been looking and searching for a long time, but we haven't found anything. And so this article I read was trying to come up with some explanations for why we haven't found other life. And one of the explanations given had God written all over it. Of course, the author is an evolutionist, so he wouldn't dare ever use the God explanation. But that's how I was reading it. So if you'll bear with me for just a few moments, I'd like to run through some numbers real quick and talk about some scientific hypotheses to set up this lesson. And these aren't my numbers. I didn't do the math. I'm taking this from somebody else, from this other article. When you go out on a clear night and you look up at the sky and see all those stars, you are looking at approximately 2,500 stars. That is about 1% of how many stars there actually are. As many stars as there are in our galaxy, which is somewhere between 100 and 400 billion, there are roughly an equal number of galaxies in the observable universe. So for every star in the Milky Way, there's a whole galaxy out there. Altogether, that comes out to the typically quoted range of between 10 to the 22nd and 10 to the 24th total stars. What that means, we boil all those numbers, if you didn't follow along with those numbers, what that means is that for every grain of sand on Earth, there are about 10,000 stars out there. It's a lot of stars. But we keep going on. Of all those stars, 5% are like our sun. That's the low estimate. Some people say it's as high as 20%, but let's just stick with the 5% low estimate. That means there's 500 quintillion, or 500 billion stars that are just like the sun. Those stars have planets going around them. Some of those planets, about 22% of them, are like Earth. They have similar temperatures, possibly water, could support life just like it does right here. That means there are around 100 quintillion or 100 billion Earth-like planets that could sustain life. Now, all those numbers, a lot of big numbers there. And the point in all of it is that if you believe in evolution, and if you're a naturalist who thinks that life just sort of starts out as a single-celled organism that develops in some sort of ooze and that turns into life as we know it today, then with 100 quintillion other planets out there that are just like ours, the only reasonable thing to believe is that it has also happened somewhere else in the universe. The estimate that this particular author came up with, as well as many other scientists, there's a lot of people who have sort of agreed with this. It's that there should be at least 100,000 different intelligent civilizations out there. And that's the conservative estimate. And this is why Fermi had to look up and ask, where is everybody? Where is everybody? We did the math. The math is overwhelming. At least 100,000 other intelligent civilizations. Where is everybody? Well, there's a lot of explanations from the naturalist point of view. And the one that stood out to me is what's called the Great Filter. Okay? What is this Great Filter? This is a theory that says there must be something along the way of evolution that is simply too big of a leap. It's just too much. It could happen at any stage, and it could be for any number of reasons. And so you have all these different life forms throughout the universe. But as they develop, eventually they all reach a certain point in their evolution where they just can't go any farther. And so here we are looking for intelligent life, and maybe there are all sorts of other civilizations out there looking for signs of life also, but none of us can seem to get to the point where we can travel through the universe and start communicating with each other. We just can't become smart enough to figure out how to do it. Maybe there's a whole lot of civilizations, but we'll never get to the point, never get past that filter to where we can contact one another. Or, and this is the part that really got me, the Great Filter could not be ahead of us in our evolution. Can we get to that point, but rather behind us? According to this article, the Great Filter could be behind us, like life starting at all. And I quote, "One possibility. The Great Filter could be at the very beginning. It might be incredibly unusual for life to begin at all. This is a candidate because it took about 1 billion years of Earth's existence to finally happen, and because we have tried extensively to replicate that event in labs and have never been able to do it. If this is indeed the Great Filter, it would mean that not only is there no intelligent life out there, there may be no other life at all." Now, when I read this, I sort of perked up a little bit, because one of the big tenets of evolution is that we, the human species, are not special. Because they think that we just happen by chance, and that we are simply the result of nature doing what nature does, they insist there's nothing more special about the human race than anything else in nature. It's all just nature. Our place here on Earth is no more important than anywhere else in the universe. But when they talk about the Great Filter as an explanation for why they can't find life anywhere else in the universe, then there is an unspoken implication. If there is some Great Filter and life is extremely rare and possibly even not there at all, well, then that means we are special. That means we are somehow different than everything else. Call it the Great Filter, call it God, call it what you want. What it leads to is the fact that humans have a special place in the universe. Now, the evolutionist will scoff at this idea, even though their own theory of the Great Filter says that very thing. Once upon a time, people believed that the Earth was the center of the entire universe. Once upon a time, people believed everything rotated around the Earth. Once upon a time, people believed that we were the center of everything. And today, science tells us that's not true. And so scientists have concluded that we really don't hold a special place in the universe. We're just this speck floating through this vast universe, and to think of it in any other way than that, to think that we are somehow special or unique or whatever it is the equivalent of going back to thinking that the Earth is flat, that the sun and the stars revolve around us. It's just naive thinking. Now, the evolutionist will admit that humans, in our context, are a bit unique, meaning we have traits and characteristics that other species don't have. We have a conscious, an extremely complex brain. We have speech that conveys our thoughts. Animals don't have that and can't do it. You know, we laugh at jokes, we cry when we're sad, we express emotions that a lot of other animals, they don't do that. They can't do that. The way we act, the way we conduct ourselves, the way we think is completely unique to anything else on this planet. The evolutionist will admit that, but they won't admit that that makes us special in any way. Just different. And I don't know why they're so insistent on that fact and trying to pound that into people's heads. And they feel it's necessary to keep saying it and keep saying it and keep saying it. It seems a very sad viewpoint to take, but it is the one that they take. And they say, although our characteristics are unique, they are simply the result of evolution, which does not make us special in any way. As Christians, as people of God and followers of Christ, we know that we are special. And let's just play the what if game. What if we did find life on another planet? And what if it wasn't just life, not just bacteria or some single-celled organism? What if it was intelligent life? The fact is, the Bible never specifically says we're the only intelligent beings that God created. The Bible doesn't actually address that topic at all, ever, anywhere. Why not? Because it's not relevant. It's really not relevant to anything. We are concerned with salvation. We're concerned about living our life here on this earth in the manner prescribed by God. We're concerned about the role that sin plays in our lives and how we get rid of that sin and come into fellowship with God. Life on other planets plays no role in that whatsoever. But what if we did find life on another planet? An evolutionist would immediately say, see, proof of evolution. They would say, see, we're not special. But would that be true? In the beginning, God created. What did God create? He created everything. Everything here on earth, everything out there in the universe. All the things that we can't even see, God created. Now think about that fact. God created things in this universe that even to this day, no human eye has ever seen. In fact, God has created more things in the universe that we've never seen. All those planets, all those stars, everything that's out there that we have never laid eyes on. Whatever thing we find out there in the deep, dark recesses of space, God created it. He made it. Would it mean we're not special? John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. That sounds pretty special to me. That sounds extremely special. The fact is, no matter what happens on Earth or elsewhere in the universe, no matter what scientists say about our place in this universe, we are special. We are special because God created us, and he created us for a specific purpose, which is to have a personal relationship with him. He didn't just create us. Genesis 1:26 says he created us in his image. And if we look at the first 4 verses in the Gospel of John, it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him. And apart from him, nothing came into being that has come into being. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. Then we skip down to verse 14. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we saw his glory, glory as of the only begotten from the Father, full of grace and truth. This is a really, really big deal. The Creator himself became flesh, came to this earth in the flesh, and dwelt among us. Even after his creation managed to mess things up and choose sin and allow death into the world, he provided a way out. He gave us a sacrifice. He offered salvation to the fallen. This is something that we should never downplay or try to undermine. This fact means that we hold a very special place in this universe. He told Jeremiah in Jeremiah 1:5, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. And before you were born, I consecrated you. I have appointed you a prophet to the nations." God already knew Jeremiah before Jeremiah was even out of the womb. He had already had a task for him. He had a plan for him. He knew exactly what he was going to do. In Luke 12:7, Jesus says, "Indeed, the very hairs of your head are all numbered. Do not fear, you are more valuable than many sparrows." 1 John 1:3, "What we have seen and heard we proclaim to you also, so that you too may have fellowship with us. And indeed our fellowship is with the Father and with his Son, Jesus Christ." Because we no longer see the direct miracles and the signs of God today, we seem to have forgotten the amazing fact that the whole reason we're here is because God put us here. And yet, he interacts with us individually, in individual ways, in individual times. He wants us to have a special relationship with him. He wants us to have fellowship in him. But far too many people have forgotten just how special that is. They view it as a waste of time. And it's boring. And it's unnecessary. If we go back to the Old Testament in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 5, verses 22 through 24, "These words the Lord spoke to all your assembly at the mountain from the midst of the fire, of the cloud and of the thick gloom, with a great voice," and he added no more. "He wrote them on 2 tablets of stone and gave them to me. And when you heard the voice from the midst of the darkness, while the mountain was burning with fire, you came near to me, all the heads of your tribes and your elders. You said, 'Behold, the Lord God has shown us his glory and his greatness, and we have heard his voice from the midst of the fire. We have seen today that God speaks with man, yet he lives.'" Put yourself in the Israelites' shoes. They understood who this was that was talking. This was the God. This was the great I am. This is the King of Kings, the creator of everything. And he was talking with Moses. They saw right there on that mountain the terrible, fearful power of God, and that was just smoke and fire. What they were terrified of, that was a tiny, tiny, tiny little bit of his power. And what was he doing with it? He was giving them the laws that he wanted them to live by. Personally. He was instituting a government and a system of living just for them. He was going to be their God. Talk about special. That was as special as it could get, at least for a few thousand years. Because then God would top that one. He would do that one even better. He would send his son to the earth for all of us, not just the Jews, but every single one of us. He died on the cross for every single one of us. And now it's not just God talking to Moses. God's talking to all of us. Hebrews 4:14 through 16. "Therefore, since we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold fast our confession, for we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who has been tempted in all things as we are, yet without sin. Therefore, let us draw near with confidence to the throne of grace, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need." The Son of God himself is our high priest. He is our intercessor. He is our path to God. He is the way of salvation. It doesn't get any more special than that. What is the great filter? I'll tell you exactly what it is. The great filter is God. God is the great filter. Just like the article says, we've tried to recreate evolution. We've tried to create life. We've tried to do all the things that evolutionists say happen, and yet we can't do it. Why not? Why can't we do it? Because it's too big of a leap. It's something that cannot be done by mere humans. It's something that cannot be done by mere chance. If it's going to happen, it can only happen with God. There's nothing that has been created that wasn't created by God. There's nothing that exists that is outside of God. If something will be, it must go through that great filter, which is God. As Ephesians 4:6 says, there is one God and Father of all, who is over all, and through all, and in all. Do you feel special? Today's world, there's a very nihilistic outlook. We have a postmodern philosophy, and it's easy for people to think that they aren't special. In our world, the media creates an image of what man looks like and what a woman looks like, and it's very easy to get down on ourselves if we don't conform to that image. As if the teenage years of peer pressure and the need to fit in aren't enough, those things have been extended into adulthood. People have lost their unique identity, their sense of purpose. People simply do not feel unique, special, or made by God. But I'm telling you right now, you are special. Because there is a great filter. And the only way anything gets through that filter is if it was designed and created with a special purpose. The only reason you are here today, breathing this air, sitting in front of this screen, hearing these words, is because God wanted you to be here doing these things. We can all recite Psalm 139 as if they were our own words, and they would be true. Verses 13 through 16, for you formed my inward parts. You wove me in my mother's womb. I will give thanks to you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, and my soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret and skillfully wrought in the depths of the earth. Your eyes have seen my unformed substance, and in your book were all written the days that were ordained for me, when as yet there was not one of them. That's pretty special right there. And it applies to each and every one of us. It even applies to the sinner. Even the sinner who doesn't recognize his need for God, who doesn't desire to know God, who doesn't love God. He was still created with a special purpose by God. Even the sinner was fearfully and wonderfully made. Even the sinner was woven and formed by God in their mother's womb. And I just wish that more people would recognize that and think about that and take time to consider what that really means. God loves you. 1 John 4:16, and we have known and believed the love that God has for us. God is love, and he who abides in love abides in God, and God in him. And John adds in verse 19, we love him because he first loved us. He first loved us. Paul tells us, for by grace you have been saved through faith, and that not of yourselves, it is the gift of God. He loves us unconditionally. He loves us with all of our baggage. He loves us with all of our problems and our issues and all of our hang-ups. He loves us even when we think we are undeserving of love. And he sees us as being special, even when we don't see it ourselves. And as such, we are offered a gift. He gives us the gift of salvation. He offers the gift of mercy and of grace that allows us an eternity in heaven right there by his side. Now think about that. eternity by his side. Eternity right next to God, with God. Why would God allow such a thing? Because that's what he wants. He actually wants to be with you for eternity. If that's not special, I don't know what is. I hope this week you will consider these things. I hope you will ponder these things and chew on these things. And if you are not feeling very special, if you are not feeling worth it, consider these things. God is the great filter. And the only reason you are here is because he wanted you here. Hope you all have a great week. Talk to you on Sunday.